Every young brother grows up with a dream. Some want to hoop, some want to rap. For some, it's football, the bright lights, the roar of the crowd, the idea that the game is the ticket out. But what happens when the lights fade? When the jersey comes off? When you realize the dream was never the destination, it was just the doorway. Today on Sons of Thunder, we're sitting down with a man who turned the doorway into a dynasty. From 5-star recruit to NFL team captain to now the CEO of a growing waste management company. Russell Shepard went from field to fleet. We're talking about access, how seeing grandfather and father own trucks gave him vision before the world gave him validation, and how he's now building a company that provides jobs, dignity, and legacy. So if you're listening right now and you ever felt like your dream was shrinking or your plan had to change, lean in, because this episode is about turning what you see into what you build. Let's go. Glad to have my guy, Russell Shepard, here. Russell, thank you for joining us for Thunder Thoughts. Russell and I go way back, LSU Tigers. We both hit campus in 2009. You came a little earlier. We talked a little bit about that. And Russell might have helped me through a class or two at LSU. But man, so proud. Glad to have you on Thunder Thoughts. You know, we talk all things access, all things young black men, and you're a shining example, brother, of what it means to be able to navigate spaces and places, take advantage of that access. But it all begins somewhere, right? So talk to us a little bit about Russell Shepard, the beginning of who you are, and what makes Russell.
So, I'm a proud Houstonian, grew up in the Houston area, son of Russell Shepard Sr., Nikki Shepard. Just two hard working class, individuals. Met in the late 80s. And my mom was a young parent. Both were young parents. And, beautiful thing about me, growing up with young parents, I got the privilege of watching them grow, watching them evolve. So mom being 18, fresh out of high school, dad being in his early 20s, I got to watch them evolve as people. So I grew up in, inner city Houston, and I just watched my mom and dad just kind of be tradesmen, corporate America, and just work their way, through corporate America. My dad did all type of small businesses, whether it was HVAC, CDL driving across the country, hauling natural material like sand, gravel. I just got to see two young hustlers really put it all together and create a great environment and be a good example for what I aspire to be one day as a young entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you watched the grit, the grind, your parents, but what was the first moment you put the ball in your hand? Like, talk to us about that. I mean, obviously folks see NFL, LSU, but it all started with a love for the game. When did you start? When did you kind of know you wanted to do football?
So I would say probably like 95. I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Mom and dad both really weren't, really big sports people. They respected the game and we watched it in our household, but it was something that they always put me in. They always spoke about, hey, we want you outside of, being a future business owner. We want you to be a well-rounded individual, play sports, be able to mingle and be in any room. They put the football in my hand when I was 5. That was my first obsession. I never thought I can love something so much. And it just kind of took over from there. Took a young obsession with the game, took some of the things that mom and dad put into me, like discipline, being consistent, hardworking, being genuine with my approach to whatever I did. And it just turned into a beautiful thing for me and soon to be my young family as well.
Yeah, so obviously young, love the game. At what point did you realize that there was a level of discipline and hard work you had to put in this if you wanted it to be more, right? Because a lot of folks have passions about things and, may like to do something, but at what point do you realize, all right, I got to go all in to make sure that this is going to be something?
So probably was around the time, early 2000s, once I got to middle school, to that point, once I got to that point, I've been playing, the game for about 5-6 years. And, coaches, other parents, my parents start to tell me, hey, you think you probably can go to school with this. You got a talent and you seem to be, pretty consistent, pretty determined with it. So around 2001, 2002, once I kind of started to get into, my middle school years, I just had a bunch of people that I respected tell me, Russell, I think you can do this at a high level. And again, they're talking about going to school for, on a full scholarship, being able to get outside of, inner city Houston, use the game for what it was, what it was worth. And that's kind of when I started to really aspire to be more than just a football player that played. I wanted to be a guy that potentially can do the things that every young athlete wants to do. Retired mom, be able to travel all over the country playing the game. So once I got to middle school, I kind of took my focus and my grind to a whole different level.
I always talk about preparation plus opportunity equals destiny, right?
Yes, sir.
And now that you look back, what were some of the things you had to do to separate yourself? Because there's a lot of young, especially a lot of young black men out there that, that's the ticket out, right? I want to play ball. But now that you look back at just typical stuff you do, the average kid would do in middle, high school, college, like what were some of those things that you might have missed out on? You had to make a decision to separate yourself from to be able to really have the preparation to meet that opportunity?
I think you kind of said it in the question. It was, just being prepared. When in your youth, you waste a lot of opportunities just with the lack of experience, the age, not really understanding how being prepared can lead to, success and really whatever you choose to do. So kind of growing up a little faster than most at that age. Most kids that you're playing video games all day, you're outside all times of the night. You just you got to be reminded to be on, as moms say, be on your SHIT. So for me, it was being able to identify what I wanted to do, being able to get into rooms, be able to be a sponge to people who were doing it. So if Randy Moss was at an event at a Foot Locker in Houston, I wanted to go. Instead of going there and, hey, Dad, I wanted some shoes. Hey, Dad, I want to go listen to Randy speak. Instead of, Dad, hey, I want this new video game, Splinter Cell, Metal Gear Solid. Instead of, hey, Dad, I want to pay for this trainer to help me train and kind of take my speed to the next level. So it was really taking what I seen Mom and Dad do, really kind of keying in on that whatever the task was, the goal was, and doing the small things. That's one thing I seen my parents do. They were very detailed in the preparation side to whatever they wanted to accomplish, and I seen it lead to a lot of successful things that ultimately played a positive impact on me and my younger brother.
Yeah. Well, and the word that rings for me is sacrifice. Yeah. And one thing about in your story that I think is phenomenal was 5-star quarterback.
Yes, sir.
Everybody in the country recruiting you, all the glitz, the glam that comes with it. But you made a decision to graduate high school a semester early.
Yes, sir.
And come to LSU to start getting your feet wet already. Talk about that, because you could have easily just been the heralded quarterback, come in, but there was something in you that wanted to make impact right away. But in order to do that, you felt like there was a level of sacrifice.
No, definitely. I think it goes back to what you were saying, just being properly prepared. One thing that I realized in high school, in order for me to be somewhat obsessed with the game of football, I had to be a great student. They went hand in hand. So being able to be an A and B honor roll student throughout my grade school years, it allowed me to really focus on being able to focus on my skill set development from a football standpoint. So seeing how those things were very parallel and played, really into each other in my grade school years, I knew in order for me to achieve my goal of being a professional athlete within a 3 or 4 year period while I was at LSU, I knew I needed to get to school as early as I possibly can. It was something that I really, identified early on. And I watched a lot of people from Andrew Luck, the Michael Vicks of the world, listen to these guys do interviews, listen to these guys really talk about their student-athlete experience from a collegiate standpoint. I knew if I wanted to put myself in a position to have success at that level, I had to get into those college rooms. I had to get those college credits early on so I can really focus on being the best student-athlete I can possibly be at the collegiate level.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that obviously we're laser focused on with Thunder Thoughts, Sons of Thunder is access. So you did the work to get the access to LSU, the NFL, what changed. But one point about it is in this conversations that we've been having is I found people's access points, they always met some level of adversity, some level of opposition, that they had to have a level of humility. In your story, you come 5-star quarterback, you get to LSU, and they're like, yeah, but we don't want you to play quarterback.
In fact, best quarterback to never throw a pass at LSU.
Yeah. Talk to us about that, because you come in like you're a 17, 18-year-old kid, and you got a dream of playing quarterback, all that. I mean, black quarterback, SEC school, and then they're like, nah. So talk to us about what you still had to do with that access point to try to make sure that you were able to get to where you wanted to go.
Oh, man, so the crazy thing about that, like you said, I had, these aspirations of coming to LSU and being Jamarcus Russell 2.0.
Yeah.
Being one of the few African-American quarterbacks to lead this program. And it didn't work like that. Got to the school, started off at the quarterback position, and within, a few months going into my freshman year, these guys were talented, and these guys had respect from the locker room. So I knew for me to be a young guy and want to get on the field early, there was a possibility that I had to switch positions. And also Coach Miles was kind of whispering in my ear, hey, you can catch the ball pretty good. You can run routes pretty good for a quarterback. Being able to embrace uncomfortable moments, being willing to take on things that were not familiar to me, these were things that I knew if I went to them full speed and didn't run away from them, these are hurdles that I can jump. Yeah. These are things that will ultimately play a part in my success, my story. So having two strong parents of faith, having a wife now, but a girlfriend at the time who really supported me and was my backbone throughout my college journey, I knew that I had a better shot of achieving my dream if I was willing to adapt. Yeah. Life is about adapting. And so I wanted to be this great quarterback that led the purple and gold to a national championship and had the city and the state rocking. But I knew for sure I had to be open to change, and I had to embrace it. And that's what I was being told by my circle. The beautiful thing about, professional sports, young athletes, is that you don't do it by yourself. We get all the glory, but you got a mom, a dad, you got a coach, you got a girl, you got friends, you got grandma, you got so many people that play a part until you get to that point. And my circle, my network, it was behind me. And they was just kind of putting behind me that you can do whatever you want to do. Yeah. Embrace it, be prepared, take on these uncomfortable moments, take them on confidently. Look them in, look whomever in their eyes, whether it's an embarrassing moment or it's somebody that's telling you can't achieve or you can't do something, and stay firm with it. So my team, my people, they stood behind me regardless whatever position I was going to switch to. And, the crazy thing about it is my first NFL draft in 2010, it was that spring of 2010 after my freshman year, I watched 35 receivers get drafted.
Wow.
And then I probably watched 10 quarterbacks get drafted. So I knew that there was a higher chance of me achieving my goal if I was to potentially embrace the switch and be prepared to potentially go into my dream, my goal of the NFL at a completely different position.
Talk about, you see it all the time, ESPN, players getting in trouble, name it, college kids, same thing. You talked about your circle. How have you seen what your circle was versus other guys who might have been just as talented, but their circle? Because a lot of guys out here, we all come with God-given raw talent for us in this earth, right, to fulfill a purpose. But your circle, man, it can make or break you. Talk about what you've seen, good and bad, right? You talked about your circle, but you've seen other guys who just lose it because of the circle, right?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you are who you surround yourself with. I was told that very early on by grandma. Whether it's your kinfolk or it's your friends, you got to put yourself in rooms around people that have the same aspiration and goals. Family is family, and family's going to always be there. Childhood friends are childhood friends, but, dogs run with dogs. Cats run with cats. So being able to surround yourself with people that got the same aspiration and goals, I seen that early on. I come from a family like yourself where we're hardworking people, but we ain't saints. Yeah. And I watched a lot of my family, my friends. Unfortunately, they got put in bad situations because they were around people that they didn't ultimately need to be around at that point in time in their life. So for me, being able to listen to the right people. Yeah. Family's family. So you're going to always have that cousin, that friend that chooses to go a different route. And don't mean you have to dissociate yourself with that person or not, have a relationship with them. But, being able to listen to the right people. Yeah. So, like I said, when I got to tough moments in my life, whether it was agreeing with the coaching staff at LSU to go to receiver, I went and talked to my dad. I went and talked to my coaches, my mentors who played the game, the ones who I respected their opinions, the ones who I know who did it and had the best intentions for me in terms of, hey, this is what can come out of this if you do this. So again, for me is, being able to be genuine with your search, your pursuit of the right advice, and being able to figure out and learn how to figure out who and who not to listen to.
Yeah.
And that's what I ultimately choose to do. I never dissociate myself with my family.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I picked up at an early age, you got to find the right people and you got to listen to the right people, because you just can't listen to anybody, because some people don't have, they don't want the same thing you want for yourself.
Yeah.
And so that led to me always going to the right people, seeking the right advice, and being able to filter what and what not to take in from the hundreds of opinions you get being a young athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. So success continues, access continues, but opposition doesn't leave.
Oh.
So you finish LSU, you talked about it, you watched 35 receivers get drafted, but you never hear Russell Shepard's name called.
Never.
Talk about what that meant from having this dream to being undrafted, but you still end up an NFL team captain. But talk about that perseverance and really the mental fortitude to be able to say, I'm going to keep pushing.
Yeah. So that was one of the toughest nights of my life. Sitting in a hotel with my family and friends, knowing that there was a possibility that I probably won't get drafted, but having the confidence and the belief, the faith that I am going to get drafted.
Yeah.
That's a very conflicting emotions that go into, being a guy where I came in with 25 guys in 2009. I came in with the Morris Claibornes. I came in with the Ruben Randalls. I came in with the Barcavius Mingos, the Benny Logans, the Ron Brooks. I can name probably 2 or 3 dozen guys from 2008 to 2010, before, after, and when I came in, that were drafted. So, and all of us, we had the belief that we were going to be, that 1%, that 1% of the 1%ers. That was a tough night for me. But again, I surrounded myself with people that had the belief and they had the best intentions for Russell Shepard. Obviously, watching 235 guys get drafted that night, and I believe that night was 38 receivers that were drafted from the first round to the 7th round. Every time I heard a name get called, it was like a punch to the stomach.
Yeah.
But every time, mom's rubbing my shoulder. All right, baby. All right, we're going to be all right. Yeah. My wife is, girlfriend at the time, she's right there by me. My dad is in the corner like, God damn it. Well, you know what I'm saying? Well, my boy, you gonna be good, Shep, So again, I always put myself in a position to be ready, be prepared.
Yeah.
And I always surrounded myself with people that had the same belief and faith in what I was trying to do. So that combination of being prepared, having the confidence, having a circle that believed in me, the faith, all these things helped me get through that night. Because again, after you hear 235 guys get their name called on their dream night, you're one of the few that's stuck, sitting there waiting like it's just really going to happen. So, after the draft, there's another draft which they call undrafted, the undrafted free agent pool. And so, I started fielding calls from different teams and, teams telling me, hey, we got a $5,000 signing bonus for you, a $12,000 signing bonus. And I'm like, God damn it. My teammates, Morris Claiborne, they're getting, $2 million signing bonus, second round pick, $1 million signing bonus. Like, I'm just like, how do I still be grateful in these moments when I had such high expectations? And ultimately, my circle, my belief, my faith in God, and my belief in that, hey, I'm prepared to go out here and make this the biggest comeback story for Russell Shepard. Yeah. That's ultimately what inspired me to continue to keep going. I played 7 years, retired in my 8th year. Out of those 7 years, I was a 3-time captain, 2-time captain with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 1-time captain with the New York Football Giants, and had offers to work at the NFL level, whether it was a coach or an executive position, being a scout. So I was able to really make that sour moment one of the proudest moments in my life, because anytime I walk into Tiger Stadium, I'm in the store with my family, I can be in the airport. That's the biggest thing I get is man, I'm so proud you didn't give up. That's something that's turned into a really big achievement. Something I'm proud of is being that comeback kid.
Look, you talked about it. LSU was rocking during our years. Oh, my goodness. I didn't play it down, but I felt like...
You was out there, though.
But, man, how do you, NFL, talk about that? All the trappings of success, money, access, women, you name everything. It. Like how, we've seen so many guys get tripped up, right? Mm-hmm. Talk about just what comes at you so fast between the age of 18 and 22. Mm-hmm. And then NFL, like talk about it, man.
So, I feel like God gives us, a memory to better understand the future, to better understand where you're at. We remember the craziest things. And, when you look back at some of the things that you remember, these are things that propel you and give you the confidence to continue to push forward. So again, me, being a 5-star recruit, being a top 10 player in the country, high expectations, but obviously getting knocked down on my butt while I was here doing what I believe is some of the greatest times in the LSU era was a lot of growth through that 3-4 year period. So ultimately, when I got to the NFL, and I'm seeing dozens and just so many guys' dreams ending with one drop ball, with one fumble. It was a very intimidating thing. But ultimately, with me, being able to work through and navigate through those emotions of disappointment, being able to have the right team, the right people around me, environment, village, as they would say, I was still able to, sometimes I'm crawling over these hurdles. I ain't jumping them. I'm just barely getting over them. So, the beautiful thing with me is I came into LSU with high expectations, and by the time I left LSU, I didn't even play in my last game. Chick-fil-A Bowl versus Clemson, I think that year between Clemson and LSU, there was probably like 25 guys that played in the NFL. So it was a very talented group of guys. And at that point, I didn't even touch the field. That being my last game of my college career and then trying to go play in the NFL, I felt just so small. But that also, too, gave me a humbling moment because that made me say, okay, I'm going to do whatever it takes. So in the NFL, being an undrafted guy or being a guy that's anything but a first-round pick, they tell you special teams.
Yeah.
Special teams is everything. Special teams is what's going to keep you on this team. Special teams is what's going to give you a role until you become the number one receiver, number one DB. So, when I got to the NFL, again, I'm a sponge. And I learned that from my parents. I listened to the people who are doing or who have done what I wanted to do. So I embraced special teams. So quickly within my first year, I really took pride in teams, being gunner, being a blocker on kickoff return, being a personal protector on punt team. These are things that I didn't look down upon. Most of these guys that are trying to fight for a position, they're drafted. They want to be the best center, the best DB, the best safety. I just wanted to make the team.
Yeah.
So I really, really embraced special teams. And with the help of people like Thomas McGahee, who was my special team coordinator at LSU and then went on to the NFL, Tommy Moffitt, who really spoke volumes. Spoke really big about my character and who I was, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who ultimately gave me a chance. All these things played into me really being a very, very prideful special teams guy, and within a year or two led to me being one of the better special team players in the National Football League.
Talk about the trappings of success and everything. Look, y'all had it, but talk about the advent of this NIL and what you see with these guys now. You talk about $2 million signing bonus. Some of these guys got $2 million at the college level. Just talk about that, because it's in a lot of ways it's wild, but how do you see that, one, changing the game, but also what it requires of a player coming into college now and where your head's got to be, because you really become like a business entity day one?
So I think it ultimately is what's needed to happen in order for us to get what we were deserving as players. I watch millions of Tyrann Matthews number 7 jerseys in 2011. Yeah. He had a historic year, but simply because he didn't have his name on the back of the jersey, there was no revenue split. There was no revenue share. And again, the list goes on of guys that played a big part in this institute and other schools making, crazy money.
Yeah.
And we weren't able to get a piece of the pie. And ultimately, these things lead to us being somewhat illiterate, and not have the financial experience. So then we can then take something like the NFL and make that amazing start to life out of generational wealth.
Yeah.
For us to take the next step as professional athletes, for us to be able to capitalize on this amazing opportunity to play professional sports and lead into being investing in the right things, being young CEOs and founders of startups, being buyers of baby boomers, companies, in order to be the next man up in terms of being able to capitalize on opportunities and take advantage of being at this point of our life, I think it's needed. So I am very for NIL. The other side, what we're seeing is you're seeing a dilutes culture, because now when we played ball, it was all about, I rock the colors because I'm proud of it. I'm a broke college student, but I still get the opportunity to rep LSU, to rep Clemson, Texas, Florida. And I think in order for us to get the most out of NIL, things like creating budgets and being able to get control of all this money that's been thrown out to these 18, 17, 19-year-olds, it's going to ultimately teach, it's kind of going to put some boundaries on it, but it's going to still allow us, these young athletes, to be able to sharpen their sword when it comes to building their brand and being able to monetize it and being able to do what's needed. Because the unique thing about being a professional athlete is you accumulate a lot of wealth in your 20s. And then you come from, impoverished, backgrounds. You come from environments, circles where people don't have that skill of managing money at that level, nor generating that type of wealth. So for us, compared to a CEO of a Fortune 500 company who had 20, 30 years of experience to build this wealth, they have a lifetime skill set. We generate wealth in our 20s, and now you're telling us, hey, you got to make this last for the next 30, 40 years.
Front load the money, and the wisdom got to catch up.
That's hard.
Yeah.
It's really impossible. And like I said, whether it's somebody that wins the lottery or it's a kid that cashes in on his talents by being the number one pick in the NFL draft, it's impossible for you to give somebody all this wealth and say, hey, good luck, figure it out. So I think, again, the NIL gives us opportunity to sharpen that sword in terms of building our brands, and then it's going to lead to us being able to make this wealth sustain and last longer than what it's been, probably last almost 50 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you go from the field to the fleet.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. So what you talk about your grandfather and your dad and them trucking. And I think you actually started the trucking company while you were in NFL.
Yeah, my first business venture.
How important was it for you to see your grandfather and your father do what they did to really inspire you to do trucking, and then now in the waste management, which still involves trucking and logistics?
Yes, sir.
So how important was it for you to have that example of your grandfather and your father?
That was huge. It was huge. Grandfather and father were, they were entrepreneurs. They were tradesmen. They were like, we're going to do this, our way and do it how we want to do it. So being able to see Black men generate wealth, generate a lifestyle off of simplistic things, whether it was, like you said, a truck and you put dirt in it. Sometimes we overthink things, but my pops was always big on open your eyes and look what's out there. And people are making money with the simplest things. And the simplest things in this world make this world go around. So, my dad used to come home dirty, but he'd come home with a pocket full of money and be like, this would going in 130-degree attic gets you. This is what taking 2 tons of dirt can get you. This is what selling water can get you. I seen how how he was able to generate a life for us by just thinking simple. And sometimes thinking simple is still thinking big. So that was really big for me in terms of just figuring out, okay, I don't have to go out here and reinvent the wheel. I don't have to build this sexy thing that nobody's ever done. I just got to open my eyes, see how people are making money, see how people are using simple things every day. I need to figure out how to turn it into a business. So that was huge for me. And then my mom, she navigated and worked her way through corporate America. Mom didn't have a college degree. She actually went back and got her degree while I was in the NFL. I still watched her climb the HR ladder with major medical practices. And at the peak of her corporate America career, right before I retired, Mom was overseeing nearly 3,000 employees for Memorial Hermann. Watching Mom work through that corporate America ladder and being a chameleon that can get in any room and can work it, especially as a young Black woman in that space that's dominated by predominantly white males, And then watching dad make money with simple things. And then me growing up in inner city Houston and then watching mom and dad invest their money into real estate and watch it get bought out by major corporations. And then we were able to take that and go to better environments. That all played a positive impact on me starting my first business and then leading into me getting into my venture now, which is Shep Boys Waste Management.
Yeah. So you talked about having offers when you were leaving the league, but you decided for entrepreneurship and ownership. Talk about that a little bit, because a lot of guys would have liked to maybe stay and keep sort of living the NFL life.
Yeah.
You know, it's fast, you go on the road, you're traveling, but talk about just what was in you to say, no, I'm going to go get it out the mud and really build this.
So, it was always my goal to play a decade of professional sports. That's every athlete's dream, whether you're in the NBA, whether you're in the NFL. Everybody wants to get at least that dime. That right there is that is an accomplishment within professional sports. Even some of the greats, whether you're Deion Sanders, Kobe Bean Bryant, these guys play 13, 14, 18 years. So being able to get at least 10 years is always an accomplishment. So, once I knew I was getting close to that year, I still got to figure out what's next.
Yeah.
And so the writing was on the wall for me. Once you turn 30 in professional sports, you're 100 years old. So, we drafted a young guy. It was my 5th year in the NFL. Curtis Samuels, who's a young star in the league still to this day, plays with the Buffalo Bills.
Okay.
Curtis was born almost in 2000.
Yeah.
Once I had a teammate that was born in 2000, I was like, okay, it's time for me to look at some stuff. So, and then again, I started my first business my rookie year in the league, and I had some success with it. We were able to build and scale our dump truck company, and got it up to about a half a dozen dump trucks. And we're taking on city contracts, and I'm looking at P&L sheets with mom, and I'm going through mechanical talks and meetings with dad, and I had a staff, and it was a good learning experience for me.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I knew it wasn't something I wanted to do on a larger scale, because I knew there were better things out there for me, but it was a crash course in business.
Yeah.
So, after my 4th year, and I knew I was having a contract year. I had a great year going into my contract year. I knew that I was going to probably generate some money. So for me, once I knew that I was going to have probably opportunity to make, a good amount of money, I kind of went on this rabbit hole of what's out there, whether it was starting a sports agency. I got to learn about triple net properties from a commercial real estate standpoint. I got to learn about things that you didn't see. Ultimately, waste management was on that list of one of the things that I studied, and was able to see just the different industries they had within this lane. And, the beautiful thing about the COVID year, which was my, going into my 8th year, you got to see the resiliency of all the different business and industries.
Yeah.
And so when we had a historic year, won a national championship in 2019, but also too going into 2020, out of all the half a dozen companies and things that I had interest in, and I was taking internships with and doing all that, the only thing that was still making money was waste management.
Yeah. Everybody got to go to the toilet.
Everybody got to use the bathroom. I would say every day. Everybody, pee and pooing every day. For me, being a young entrepreneur and trying to figure out where do I put my capital at so I can continue to grow my wealth and create opportunities in the community and empower my family, my circle, it was easy for me to see shit don't stop.
Yeah.
And so for me, ultimately, at the peak of COVID, and it was August 3rd of 2020, I was supposed to sign with the Baltimore Ravens. We did the hard work of kind of getting, the company up and going, and I kind of got mom and dad to join me as partners. And we decided to just go full in, and we started Shep Boys Waste Management and Site Services LLC. And, crazy thing is I called Coach Harbaugh, and because we were probably a week out from training camp, and I said, Coach, hey, I think I'm about to retire. And he's like, what's going on? And, you're supposed to be on the plane Monday. I'm calling, this is Friday. And he's like, what's up? I was like, Coach, man, I think I got a business venture. I think I found something good. And he was like, well, what you want to do? I was like, Coach, I'm about to drive a shit truck around. Man, I can hit a pin drop 1,000 miles away. I'm in Houston, he's in Baltimore. And, I knew once I shut the door on the NFL, they don't open the door back up. You know, I'm not airing down on, I'm just a hardworking young man that had
next man up.
Next man up. So, you know, I knew once I told him no and I told the GM no at that point, I knew that it was going to be, you know, it's all I had. We were fully in. So we started off with one truck, 125 toilets in August 3rd, 2020.
Wow.
And since then, we got right at 2,000 units out. We service 2 different markets, both South Texas and South Louisiana. And it's been a great thing, really good thing.
I was going somewhere else, but just talk about your faith, because to lay the NFL down, you know, it's not like they put you out. You left, right?
I left,
and behind your dream, you know, we've already talked about obstacles at LSU and having faith about that NFL, but to then have faith to go for a dream, talk about the faith, the spiritual side of you.
Oh man, it's everything. You know, even when mom and dad always gonna ride with their baby boy. I'm the oldest boy.
Yeah.
You know, they gonna always believe in what I got. But even mom and dad was like, hey, you ain't gotta retire to do this. You got us. You know, you can still go out here, still play the game that people will give a left arm to play. You don't have to be our driver. You know, like you can go and live your dream and we can manage it. We're managing partners for you, son. Even when your circle sometimes don't see what you see, you got to have faith. And, you know, me being always tied in with my faith and having belief in the Lord and his plan for me, this goes back to what I went through at LSU. Being a 5-star guy and questioning, God, why did you bring me to this school? I could have went to Oregon. I could have went to Texas. You know, why did you bring me here to sit and watch right at the bench? You know, like, I prepared my butt off. I'm a genuine guy with my approach to people. I always put my best foot forward. I graduated school early. I was one of the few athletes that, even though I went undrafted, I still graduated with a degree. I still had a great name. Just a high character guy. What I believed in myself. And again, what I said earlier is he gives us memory so we can properly move forward. And that faith and me getting through all these things and still being able to have a respected journey, a respected career through the NFL and remembering all those things I felt, this ultimately led to me having the faith to still go forward even when my circle didn't understand it.
Wow.
And that's what ultimately, you know, that's the thing, man. With the exception of death, most things we look back at, we laugh at. Things that had us crying, things that had us sick to our stomach, no matter who you are, you look back at it 10, 20, 15 years later, you like, man, you kind of giggle at it. And even with death, when you lose people that are close to you, you don't laugh at the actual experience of losing somebody, but you think of the good of the person.
Right.
Whether it's your pops, your grandfather, you just chuckle and be like, man, that man was crazy.
You
know, so like, you know, I knew regardless however this played out, it was meant to be, and I knew that regardless how it went, I was going to look back at it and be thankful for the experience because it was going to ultimately shape me for whatever was, you know, next to come.
Yeah, I love that perspective.
I appreciate it, bro.
Love that, bro. Love that. So here we are, bro. You in Shep Boys, you say, start one restroom, 125 toilets, one truck, 125 toilets.
Yes, sir.
And then you scale that up.
Yes, sir.
What's been the risk in that? And how have you been able to scale that up? How have you managed your risk of saying, all right, I'm going to 2 trucks. I'm going to the next truck. How has that worked for you?
Well, you just, you know, again, surrounding yourself with people who do what you do and who have done what you want to do. So for me, you know, the beautiful thing when I was in New York, it was a crash course in how people scale and build businesses at a high level. I took advantage of that NFL brand, being associated with the Giants, and I was in every Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. I was trying to get as many meetings as I can because I knew at some point I was going to bet on myself and my family, and we were going to build something that can help us sustain. So, you know, I was trying to take advantage of being in this hustling market, city of New York, and I was going to see how do people build in wealth. Every time I got on the NFL team, I was one of the few players that went and found the owner. Whether it was Jerry Richardson, which was the owner of the Carolina Panthers, whether it was John Mara, who was the owner of the New York Giants. I always was, hey, how do y'all building this? You know, what's the revenue split of the stadium? You know, what's the agreement, the license agreement with the team?
Figuring out how to
do it. And again, these people are just like us. You know, they just have, you know, they're properly prepared. They have experience, the knowledge. You know, they surround themselves with people who are doing what they're doing. So, you know, my last few years while being a professional athlete, I wasn't an introvert. I was out, you know, I was, you know, extrovert. I was out there just asking 1,000 questions and seeking just as much information as I could. So having that experience with these people who've built these billion-dollar brands, that ultimately allowed us to figure out our lane in the waste management industry, and then have the experience and have the mentorship and to go out here and to build it our way. And so, with me, I knew I didn't want mom and dad to be my employees. I wanted mom and dad to be my partners. I knew that I wanted to come back home and not, give money out to my family and friends. I wanted to employ my family, my community, so then we can build something collectively together that we all can eat off of. So watching how these people scale their businesses and how they really empower their community and their families, that gave me the blueprint to go out here and can build something where my circle and myself can really eat off at the end of the day.
Yeah. So now you get to employ other brothers.
Yes, sir.
How does that feel for you, the fact that now you getting to employ other young black folks? I'm sure you got a diverse staff. But the ability to put other black folks to work, young black men, even be able to show them the trade so they might be able to spin off and start a business. How does that feel for you waking up every day?
Man, it's everything, bro. So to this point, we have 20 full-time employees. We 1099 another 5, and then we do, contractual, we do temporary work with probably another about 10 guys when we do come to hurricane season, and we do turnarounds and unique industrial opportunities. But it was everything. My first year in the NFL, I got what they call survivor's remorse. You start accumulating all this wealth, making this money, but you can't experience it and do it with the people that you love because they don't have these resources, this capital. So that's why a lot of guys tend to always give out their money, because they want to experience it with the people that they love, the people who play.
They want some friends.
Exactly, you know what I'm saying? So, that's the thing. Yeah. I knew from my first year, I was like, man, if I want to experience this at a high level and I want to be able to genuinely enjoy it, I gotta figure out, how do I build wealth with the people that I love and the people who play a part in to bettering, making me a better person, play a part into me getting to where I'm at now. So it has turned into a passion. It's turned into something that it allows me to wake up every day with a smile on my face. It allows me to have that motivation, that drive to keep going, because business is hard, especially when you're dealing with a startup. We've built $1 million company $100 at a time. Every time we put out a porta potty, it's $100. It ain't overnight success. Yeah. So, whether I got to hop in the truck and, we got a guy that's down, he's sick, or we got to make money stretch because payroll, and we got to make this premium payment. I'm able to make it through these tough times in business because it is a passion, and ultimately we're bettering our community. So it's been amazing, man. It's something, again, I had the opportunity to play nearly a decade in professional sports, and that didn't fuel my purpose. Yeah. But, being able to get back in the community and have relationships with young men and young women who want better for their families, this is what allows us to keep going. And this is kind of our secret sauce. We are collectively building something that's special. And, business is like nothing I've ever been a part of, man. I enjoy it.
Talk about the legacy piece, man.
Yes,
look, Marion, who's phenomenal.
Thank you, bro.
Hey to Marion out there.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
And 4 beautiful kids.
Yes.
You talk about what your grandfather and your father put in you, your mom.
Yeah.
Talk about the part with legacy for you with your kids, right? Because I've seen you on Instagram with the kids on the truck. And,
I appreciate it. We work
coming out there seeing it. Right. Talk about the legacy building, man.
Yeah, well, and respect towards your family. Yeah, because like I said, I have the privilege to know your brothers and know a little bit about your story. And, legacy is about, the impact, the positive impact you make on those, whether it's directly or indirectly. That's what it's all about for me. It ain't got nothing to do with money. It ain't got nothing to do with wealth. It ain't got nothing to do with statistics. It has on how did you make this world a better place after you left or while you're here. So for me, I had the privilege of being around a lot of Hall of Famers and great athletes. And it was just sad for me to see, once these guys were done playing, they didn't have a positive impact, the same impact they had on the generations to come. The game is bigger than all of us. So once you get old and you can no longer sack the quarterback or catch these balls, you got to evolve. You got to adapt. Yeah. You got to figure out, how do I take what made me great in this and how do I put it in this other game, this other arena? And that was something that turned into, I became very passionate about. And for me, I knew that I was disciplined, I had drive, I was consistent, I had obsession, wanted to be the best at whatever I chose to do. So I knew if I was able to put that in something else, I can still inspire, I can still better those around me. I can still create that legacy that I want to create, not just while I was playing ball, but again, I wanted to do it in the next chapter of my life and the chapter after that. Yeah. So for me, once I started having kids and started being able to, hold these babies and say, I got you, I wanted to be like, okay, no, I got you. I want you to know Dad, and I want you to be proud of Dad after he played football. Yeah. Because again, I play with a lot of guys who dads played in the NFL, and unfortunately, they didn't get to experience those great times. They watched their dads go through a tough transition, a very depressing decade or two post-football, retirement, because they got hurt or the game shut its doors on them. Yeah. And so for me, I wanted my kids, I wanted my wife, I wanted my community to be proud of the transition I made, and then taking what made me great in my respective sport and I put it in something else. So for me, that was something that I really want to do, is show transition, ultimately play into my purpose, which is bettering my community, and then being able to show my babies, like my parents did me, of this is how you build the right legacy. And this is how you make this positive impact on the next generation of shepherds, the next generation of athletes, is transition, being resilient, being a true player in the community, just being a genuine person with the approach to life that, look, hey, regardless of what comes my way, I'm going to embrace it. And then I'm going to take my experience and I'm going to look at it. The glass is not half empty, it's half full. Yeah. And I'm going to pay it forward.
No, I love that. All right, man, we sliding in the home plate.
Yes, sir.
I like to do a little rapid fire, just real quick answer. So what was your favorite LSU memory?
My first touchdown, Auburn, the left corner of the end zone, the student section, my freshman year. I never thought I'd score a touchdown in Tiger Stadium as a running back. Yeah. So that was always a historic moment for me, man. I just, again, I dreamed of scoring a touchdown in that stadium, and to do it, going to the student section, and then Mom and Dad were there. That's something that still to this day, man, I look back at the highlight. I'm 175 pounds, soaking wet, pads barely falling off. And again, if you'd have told me I was a running back at LSU back when I was in high school, I'd been like, what happened? Yeah. What did I do? So again, it's crazy how ironic that is that just ended up being one of my top memories.
Hardest hit you ever took?
Troy Polamalu, my first NFL catch. Wow. So we playing the Steelers in 2013. I had a slant route. It was a 3rd and 10. And, man, Mike Glennon, who was my quarterback at that time, threw me the ball. And, man, I caught it, got the first down, and next thing you know, I'm flat, feet in the air. And I was like, what's going on? And then, man, I look up, and, man, this guy with his long hair sticks his hands down and say, man, great catch, young fella. Pick me up. And that's just one of my favorite memories. My first catch, I got hit by a Hall of Famer, and I can hear Ryan Clark in the back saying, hey, great catch, Tiger. So,
yeah, that's what's up, man. Yeah. Song that gets you in grind mode.
Song that gets me in grind mode, I'm a little embarrassed to say it, man, but Boosie, Tear It Down. Yeah. Me being an LSU guy during that era, Boosie, was a huge.
See, now I feel like you a Rougian. You didn't go to Pimp C or nobody.
I did. I know. The unique thing about this state is full of culture. Yeah. My family, we didn't have, we come from Texas, East Texas, so we close to Louisiana, but we're not from Louisiana. Yeah. So being able to get here, experience the culture, the people, and it's second home.
Yeah. What's one of the biggest mistakes that taught you the most?
So look, after the draft, I did an interview. So obviously being a little embarrassed that I went undrafted, I got on a radio show. I forget who I was getting interviewed by, but, a little embarrassed that I went undrafted. They asked me, hey, Shep, how was the draft experience? What calls did you get after the draft? And I made the mistake of telling the radio guy that I took myself off the draft board and I decided not to go draft, to get drafted. So not knowing that was a violation, and I ultimately ended up having to apologize on the behalf of the Philadelphia Eagles, because I ended up going to them as a undrafted free agent. And I told the radio guy that, hey, the Eagles called me during the draft and they wanted to draft me. Howie Roseman, who's still the GM for the Eagles, he told me, hey, Shep, you can't say that. That we can't be calling you guys. We can't be offering you guys contracts behind the scenes, and you're going to have to apologize. Yeah. And you're going to have to say, hey, this was a lie. Yeah. So, and then he said, hey, you got, you're coming in here with the black eye a little bit, so you got to do everything. You got to clean it up. So you got to perform, and then you got to politic the right way. So, that was probably one of the things that taught me is humility. Take what you got, what happens, take it to the chin, embrace it, and use it as a comeback story, and not try to make yourself seem good in things that are going to ultimately play a part into being a part of your story in a great way.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. Scripture or quote you live by?
Oh man, that's a good one, brother. That's a good one. I don't probably have a favorite one, but anything in Psalms. You know what I'm saying? I mean, to me,
lift your spirit.
Yeah, just lift my spirit, man. Great stories. Obviously my last name being Shepard. The Bible, man, the great book, as I call it, it's full of beautiful stories. My son being Moses, first name Moses. That's one of my favorite stories in the Bible about Moses and just how he led the people. We probably tell that story 1,000 times in my house because we want my son to be proud of just his name and how it represents leadership and how it represents leading people through things that seem somewhat impossible. To build a portfolio of waste companies. Obviously we're continuing to scale Shep Boys Waste Management. To this point, we have 15 trucks that run 6 days out the week. We have 2,000 assets out for rent. I think the next venture we'll get into in the waste industry is grease trap and cooking oil. And we just try to build a portfolio of waste management companies. Waste management is something that's not represented by people like us. There's not a lot of minorities people in this space, and we are the only Black-owned portable sanitation company in the state of Texas.
Wow.
And again, you're talking about thousands of companies. So we want to continue to get into other opportunities, whether it's cooking oil, whether it's trash. We want to continue to scale this. And right now, last year we grew 175%. And we want to continue to grow at this pace. And over the next 10, 20 years, we want to be able to employ, if not hundreds, thousands of people, continue to create opportunities and find the right people so we can collectively build something that's of value and something that we can all eat off of. Because the one thing about sports and one thing that we've took into the the business world is you can't do it by yourself.
That's right.
So we want to find the right people who want better for themselves, and we want to create that opportunity, and we want to work with these individuals so we can collectively continue to build and be a part of their story. Because it ain't about just me, it ain't just about them. It's about us coming together and leaning on each other, us being inspired by one another. I think of the 20 people we have on staff as W-2 employees, I would say probably a dozen of those individuals have been incarcerated throughout their journey.
It's amazing.
Yes, and we got a couple of them that got 7, 8, 9 kids. So we work hard. We play hard, but we work harder, and we embody family, whether it's at work or it's away from work. So we just want to continue to create opportunities, be a representation of what Black-owned businesses look like in the waste management industry. And we just want to continue to find the right people so we can just build something that can make a positive impact on our communities.
Russell Shepard's story reminds us that access doesn't end when the game does. It just shifts fields. From watching his father and grandfather drive trucks, to leading in the NFL, to now running a company that gives other men opportunity. That's access turned into action. For every young brother listening, remember, this is not just about talent, it's about transformation. What you see can become what you build if you're willing to do the work. I'm Joshua Hollins, and this has been Sons of Thunder.